Peace everyone, Unmask here, and welcome to another live critique session. I have a lot of fantastic artwork that you have submitted to go through, so let's go ahead and get started. Okie dokie. So, the first one up here is Linda, and this is this is the artwork. The other one was the reference photo. This here is the colored pencil artwork, and there's a lot going on here. Yeah, a whole lot going on here. And as you can see, this is the reference photo. So I sort of overlaid them for the purpose of critiquing this particular one. And a few things that I wanted to address with this project, because this is when you want to do like photographs that you've taken on vacation or places that you've visited, and you want to turn them into artwork. There's a thing about photographs. Photographs can look good as photographs, but good photographs don't necessarily always translate to good artwork. Not to imply in any way that this isn't great artwork. There's just some elements that you want to look for in the photo before translating it to the artwork. So here, let's just look at a couple things where from the reference photo, it doesn't translate as well into artwork. Hope the live stream is working well. Okay, should be good. Hello everyone. You can hear me okay, right? I just want to double check before I continue on. So somebody in chat just give me like a thumbs up or something. Oh, okay. Sorry. It was being weird on my end, so that was my fault. All right. Everything's good. Hey there, Linda, Diane, Cindy, Rain, Lisa, Susan, Chrissy. Always a pleasure to see you. Cherry. Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. All right. So back to this lovely artwork by Linda. So, like I said, when you use a reference photo, you want to make sure that each element that you intend on adding from the reference photo into your artwork sort of makes sense so that when you replicate it, the viewer of the artwork knows what they're looking at. And so there's a couple elements in here that I don't think necessarily add to the image as an artwork. Now, from the reference photo, we'll just have a quick look at the reference photo here. From the reference photo, you look at this, you see a photograph, you're like, okay, there's this building seemingly in like the middle of the woods kind of thing, sort of run down looking, kind of cool. And then you bring it into the artwork side of things. So I'm going to just circle a couple elements where contextually you can't really tell what it is. So the first thing that I wanted to circle are these hanging tree barks. There's two things about these hanging tree barks. The first thing is, without having access to the reference photo, which you have to understand, a lot of viewers are not going to have access to the reference photo, right? So they're going to look at these and be like, what are these? And it's going to be difficult for them to understand what these objects are. And the reason these objects are rather jarring is because, one, it's hard to figure out why there would be tree bark randomly hanging from the top of the image. The second is that they're very dark. Like, they stand out significantly against the very, very light foliage behind what they're on top of. And so I think by removing those objects from the artwork side of things, it makes sense. And if I were to draw this reference photo, I would have removed those two objects because artistically they don't add to the scenery in what you're trying to focus on. I believe the focus point should be more here. And these objects are a distraction. So this can be something rather difficult to learn to do, but by removing the distractions from a reference photo when you create the artwork from it can go a really, really long way. The second thing is this object right here. And in the reference photo, it sort of looks like a plastic bag or something along those lines. It's really hard to tell exactly what it is. Even in the reference photo, I have no idea what it is exactly. I was thinking it was like a plastic bag for trash or something for visitors or whatnot. That's sort of what it feels like to me. And I don't think it adds anything trying to replicate it into the artwork because in the artwork, I have no idea what it is. Like, I have no idea what it is in the reference photo, and therefore I would have excluded it in the artwork. The next things that I would have excluded, these green patches, they sort of look like astroturf or like, like the fake grass. I'm not sure exactly what they are in the reference photo. And again, you have to ask yourself, do they add anything that's beneficial to the artwork? And arguably, I would have to say no in this case. I think that if it was just that stone sort of pathway all the way through, I think it would just look more even and just look more coherent. Whereas these green circles on the ground, when you look at it in the artwork, let me remove the red circles, it's not grass, right? Because there's no like blades of grass. They're just sort of like these green spots, and you can't really figure out what they are. And so when doing scenes that have a bunch of stuff happening, you want to minimize the viewer's confusion. You want the viewer to be able to look at it, know what your focal point is, and they can go around and they can look at things, like they can see all the words that are written on the building and all the little designs and stuff. All of those details are coherent and the viewer can understand them. But then when they get to these, these red tree bark thingy or these really dark tree barks hanging, it's hard to tell what it is. What this is, these green patches, there's these little bits of confusion that I think instead of benefiting the artwork, they actually diminish it. So I would try to be a little bit more conscientious of what you choose to put in from the reference photo. Other than that, the only other thing that I would discuss is the values. So, Linda, you did a few drawings like this where I talked about creating the difference between where the light is coming from and the shadows. And this is another really difficult one. You're definitely doing extremely complex sceneries that have a difficult light to establish. But here in the reference photo, you can see that everything is very dark. And the only light spots are these little light spots on the ground where the sun is actually coming through, these little gaps in the trees. And that's hard to do. I admittedly, that's very difficult to do. It's very difficult to just use darker colors in general. It can be very intimidating. And when you have it here in the artwork, you see the spots. You see the spots. They look good, but I think everything would benefit if it were darker. In particular, the framing of the scene. You can see how dark these trees are. All of the trees in this scene. you can see how much darker they are. And let me just grab this color and I'll just put it off to the side here. So it's like a really dark grayish brown. It's not real brown. It's pretty close to gray. Here's a really dark brown on that tree. And if I go to the drawing here, you can see your values don't really come close. So these two values are the comparison. These two values were this tree, and these two values were the shaded part on this tree. So you can see that everything is lighter than it should be. And it sort of goes back to the monthly masteries. Like the reason I break down the monthly masteries the way that I do with the shadows and the lights is because when you're working in the shadows, you want to make sure that everything in the shadows is darker than what's in the lights, because that's what makes them shadows in the artwork. So just try to get the dark shapes. Try to focus more on the shapes and less on what the object is. In this case, it sort of feels maybe you focus too much on this is a tree, let me color a tree and make sure it looks like a tree. Whereas if you would just have dark shapes with no texture whatsoever, I think it would just, and it would look better because you'd have that contrast. All right, moving on to Linda's second project, which is this lovely cat. And Linda, I gave you some insight on this while you're working. And this is another example of, does the reference photo translate to good art? And I like that you modified the background, you modified the color of the blanket. I'm not sure if that was intentional, but I think it was a good choice because it's a little bit more complementary. The color is more bold, whereas in the reference photo, it's a little washed out. So I like the color choice that you went with in the color changes and the compositional changes, removing this bit here and instead putting all of that. I think that looks really good. The colors look really good and everything like that. Now, what I mentioned in what I mentioned in Discord when you asked me about this was, where is the light source? And you pointed out correctly, because it's rather obvious when you look at the shadow here, the cast shadow from the cat. The only problem is that's sort of it, right? You only sort of get that cast shadow and you don't see much form in the cat itself. And that's partially due to two things. The first is that the reference photo is being lit by artificial light. So I'm guessing like an overhead light in the bedroom or living room or wherever this picture is taken. And artificial light is naturally diffused. It's naturally soft. You don't get hard shadows, which makes it good for taking certain types of photos. However, when you translate those photos to artwork, you lose a lot of form. If you've ever done a portrait, which in the art club we've done many, the portraits where the light is very soft and there's not a lot of shadows on the face or anything like that, it's all just sort of one color, you'll notice that those portraits look very flat and rather uninteresting. And it's instead, when you take the portraits that have really hard shadows, really like dynamic lighting, that looks a lot better, right? And so if I were to just, I'm going to just lay down a shadow, I'm going to darken the cast shadow, and then I'm going to darken the, well, technically it's the cat's left side because that corresponds with the light, right? This is where the shadow ought to be, right? This is sort of where the shadow is or should be, based off of the light. And then I'm just going to turn this to multiply, and there. So that is with more form shadow. That's not in the reference photo, right? Nobody sees that in the reference photo. We can see that there's like no shadow whatsoever, partially because the fur of the cat is so dark and it's spotty and there's different colors all over the place. It's really hard to tell, okay, where's the light and where's the shadow. The other thing that I think is pretty apparent is this orange color. So you can fix this by using a toning color. Let's maybe grab something a little bit more vibrant. So a toning color with orange, right? And I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to just throw this orange sort of in here like this, a little bit on the fur up here, here, maybe a little touch there, maybe a bit on the paw, maybe here and here. And then let's just filter. Let's blur this a little bit. Yeah, that's good. And soft light, overlay. Yeah, overlay I think is good. And I'll just turn down the saturation or the opacity a bit. Maybe around there. And let's just adjust the color tone. So this is a little bit too orange or yellow. Maybe go a little bit red. Pull down the saturation just a touch. Maybe darken it a little bit. Yeah, maybe something like that. So here I'm just boosting the saturation in the transition areas of the fur. Now, obviously, the color that you go with the artwork can vary quite a bit, but I think that the gray orange sort of khaki color of the fur didn't quite translate into the artwork as well as you'd hoped. And I think that a lot of excuse me, the saturation over here in the artwork, the pattern, the colors are competing a little bit with the cat, and it's making it's more distracting than beneficial in my opinion, because the cat looks like that. The blanket or whatever this is behind the cat actually has more saturation, more colors than the cat itself. And by adding that saturation into the cat, it brings the cat more into focus. It becomes more of the focal point of the artwork. And then also by creating deeper shadows than what the reference photo supplies you with, creates more form, which makes the cat more three-dimensional. It's now doing it digitally, it's a little bit more stylized than you would if you were going for realism and you did this, you took time to do this. If I took time to artificially put these shadows on the cat, then I could probably get it looking a bit more less stylized. But you can see the difference in the form. There's more form in the artwork than there is the reference photo because we forced it into the artwork, and it just makes it more three-dimensional. But anyways, it's a fantastic drawing, and I hope that those ideas help you in the future. Linda also did this lovely colored pencil. This is colored pencil, believe it or not. The textures in this are amazing. You did a fantastic job on this project. I really have nothing but praise to say. The textures on the jug and the oranges are just amazing. I wouldn't change anything about this. Colors. Now, just to clarify for everybody that may not be familiar with this project that we finished up a few weeks ago, I did this project and I taught this project in pastels. And then Linda here did it in colored pencils. And when I was going through all of the submissions for the critique today, I was just putting the images into Photoshop and naming them, and then I I looked at it. I was like, is that pastel? And then I went over where Linda shared it, and it is indeed colored pencil. And I am thoroughly amazed because it's so well done that I genuinely thought it was pastel. Um, and yeah, so Linda, you knocked this one out of the park. This one is absolutely wonderful. So that's all I gotta say. There's no critique here. Fantastic textures. All right. Up next is Lisa G. She did the frog and beetle colored pencil project that we did not too long ago. And this one came out really, really well. You did fantastic on the colors, the textures. Everything's really, really well done. The only thing that I want to critique here is the background. And the background, it's rough. I trust me. I wasn't even satisfied with my own background on this one. The background is not easy. It takes a lot of time to do soft, blurry colored pencil backgrounds, and sometimes you get it right, and sometimes you just get tired of working on it. Now, overall, the background's good with the colors and the blending and all of that. The only thing that I want to mention is the bokeh circles that you added. They are a little bit too crisp around the edges, so you want them to fade into the background a little bit more. The other thing about bokeh circles is that you're not going to have such varying sizes. Okay, so bokeh circles are created by the camera's blades. Okay, so inside the camera lenses, there's blades that open and close, and that's called the aperture. And bokeh circles are created when the aperture is really, really wide, which means those blades are wide open and it's letting a lot of light in. And that's what gives you that really shallow depth of field where something's really in focus and then what's behind it is really, really blurry. And those bokeh circles are created by high quality lenses that have smooth blades and a really wide aperture. Okay. So really, really wide. And so because that's what causes those little circles to appear in the background, they're going to be really close to similar size, right? So here you have some like medium circles and then some rather small circles. And you wouldn't really get that because it's the light coming through the camera causing that effect. So make sure when you vary the size of your bokeh circles in your artwork, you don't do it too extreme because it's just not the way bokeh circles look in photographs. Okay, so that's the only sort of nitpicky thing I have about the background. But otherwise, you did really good. Just like me, it looks like you left a little bit of graphite maybe around the edge of the log, so just be careful with that. I did the same thing, but mine was more here with the furry stuff off the beetle. It can be a bit of a headache removing the graphite as you go, but it's important. But you did a really good job on this one, Lisa, and I appreciate the submission. All right, up next is Dorothy, and she did this beautiful pastel project here. If you've never seen this one, I think I did this one last year. Those of you in chat can correct me, but I think we did this project last year around summertime. I think. I don't know. We've done so many projects, it's impossible for me to keep track, but this was definitely one of my favorites. I love the bowl. The bowl in this one is is so good. The other thing that I really love about this is the really subtle textures in the fruit. You have that orange. I love the orange peel. The orange peel looks amazing. The apple looks amazing. The bananas, so good. Honestly, Dorothy, this one looks absolutely amazing. Now, where there's a couple tiny things, and I mentioned this. I remember when we were working on this project, I said one of the hardest things with this project is going to be these circles, these elliptical circles that are on the surface of the table. Wow, has it been that long, Diane? Wow, 3 years ago? That just tells you how off I am with my time frame. I thought it was last year. It was 3 years ago we did this project. That's wild. So yes, like I said, those elliptical circles on the surface of the table, getting them in perspective the right way and making them look right, it's tough. Trust me, I know it's super super tough to do. You did a really really good job on the table. These circles are a little off. They sort of bow in the back a little bit. See how it sort of comes down here? It's sort of bowing in a little bit. I'm exaggerating that one, but yeah, so those circles are just a tiny bit off. The other thing is that you have a gradient sort of smooth. The transition from the table to the background is a little bit, it's kind of blurred into it, and that looks really good. On this side, it's a little bit crispier of a line. So there's a little bit of differentiation between the sides where I think you could just blend that a little bit, maybe if you wanted to. And that's the only things that I gotta say here. The texture on the table is amazing. Really, really good transition between the lights and the shadows. It looks it looks super, super good, and I hope that you're proud of this one because you should be. All right, up next is Garima, and she did this colored pencil portrait that was free-handed. So really, really good, really well drawn portrait for freehand. Really great, rich colors. I love the eyes. They really pierce the scene. Really nice shadows. I like the shadow over here. This really nice dark shadow gives a nice edge to the face. I think that if we were to sharpen up this edge a little bit, it's not gonna look great because I'm doing this with one color. But if you were to sharpen up that edge, it really helps separate the face a bit more, make that edge a bit cleaner. And I think it just makes it so here it's a little bit fuzzy around the cheek there. So sharpen up that edge a bit, and the face looks really good. Same thing with the nose. If I take this color here and I just sort of sharpen up like the nostril a bit. Like I said, this isn't going to look perfect because I'm just using one color, but by sharpening it up, you're going to bring that nose a little bit more into focus. Really great highlights on the lips. The lips do look a little bit red. They just look a little tad bit red. Doing portraits of men can be kind of rough when you get to the lips because lips naturally have a bit more of a pink, a bit more of a red color to them. And if you go a little bit too red, then it sort of looks like you put lipstick on your guy. Here, it's real close looking lipsticky. Fortunately, you have a lot of nice reds and oranges throughout the portrait, so it doesn't totally look like he's wearing lipstick. But what you could do is you could take this neutral skin tone color and sort of mix it into the lip color to sort of bring down those reds a touch. The other thing, the eyes look really good, but you have to be. This is something that a lot of people get caught up on portraits. You have to be very, very careful not having the irises and the pupils centered on the eyes. This eye here, so let me just grab this eye here, sort of looks like it's looking this way. This eye, however, looks more like it's looking straight at us. It's sort of like straight at us kind of light. This is supposed to be an arrow pointed straight at us, but it's hard to do that. So this eye looks like it's looking at us. The other eye looks like it's looking straight ahead. And And that's just the placement of the pupils. Remember, make sure you, when you have the eye, right, make sure the pupil's in the center, okay? Because this pupil is a little off center here. It's a little off. You have less space on the left side than the right side. That's causing that disconnect in where the eyes are pointed. So just be very careful with that. Thank you very much, Diane. Yes, if you are enjoying the critique today, then please give the live stream a thumbs up. I greatly appreciate that. And if you're new here, let me know in chat. I do apologize if I happen to miss any questions in chat. Anytime I do the live critiques and I'm working in Photoshop, it's so much more difficult for me to keep track of chat. So I do apologize if I happen to miss anything. Hey there, Sketch. Garima, good to see you. Chandri, good to see you as well. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. We got a ton of fantastic artwork to look at today. And we've already looked at a lot of it. All right, so hopefully those tips help you out, Garima. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I will do my best to see them in chat. Alrighty, up next is Diane. She's got a whole bunch. She's got two here. And this one, we've seen, this one is in pastel. So Linda's was in colored pencil and Diane's is in pastel, which is what I did this project in. And you can almost not even tell the difference between the two mediums, which, trust me, coming from me is big, because usually I can look at any artwork and immediately recognize what medium it's done in, because I've just been doing it for so long. And I genuinely thought that Linda's was in pastel. So now you'll notice a few changes. Diane obviously added more behind the framing of the project. Linda did as well. She did like this creamy yellow, or what was it? Yeah, sort of like this this light yellow color, and then Diane did the color of her wall in her house, if I remember correctly. And she changed the color of the bird, which I really like. I almost wish that I made my bird blue, because I love how the bird being blue balances out the blue satin tablecloth on the left side. It feels really natural, and the reddish color of the chest of the bird just looks so good. Like, the bird just looks so good. It really, really does. The texture in the jug, honestly, I might like your jug better than I like my jug. The jug looks so good. Like, I feel like I can reach out and feel the clay that jug is made out of. The texture is spot on, really, really nice mixture of the lines and the dots to get that texture. The satin cloth has a few too many black lines. So let me just grab a color really quick. Let's switch to this. So like these black lines here, let me zoom in a bit. These black lines, they add sort of like a threading almost to the cloth. And I think the gradients underneath of the texture needed to just be a little bit smoother before you added the texture on top. But it still looks good. And like, let me do like this edge. See how it sort of creates like this harder edge here, and it feels like it changes the thickness of the blanket or the tablecloth. Whereas in the reference photo, it seemed to feel like a softer, thicker. Whereas when you have those edges, those sort of black edges, it feels like the cloth is thinner and it's not as soft. It still has that satin look, with the contrast between the darks and the light. So you still have the texture and the satin look correct, but I think it was the layers underneath that just needed to be a bit smoother to get that softness. But it still looks really good. I'm just nitpicking because I got to say something, right? You have to find something to improve on. I did have a question for you, actually, Diane. Did you have any intention of doing shadows of the frame itself? So the light source is sort of meant to be coming from this direction a bit. Did you intend on adding like a cast shadow of the frame like this? Because I think that it would have benefited. I'm not sure. I can't quite tell if you did or not, but let's just do it like this. And maybe turn down the maybe yeah, just maybe something like that. You tried to add it, but it didn't seem to want to go dark enough. Yeah, I think that it would have looked better darker, um, the way that I have it here. I think that it would look really good like that. So I couldn't quite tell if you had tried to add it or not. Um, so that's why I was asking, as opposed to just straight up critiquing that you didn't go dark enough on the shadow. But I think that that cast shadow would look really good if you wanted to go back and try to add it darker. Um, just remember that the cast shadow from the blanket tablecloth here will step further to the right because the tablecloth is further out away from the wall. So just remember that. So there may not be a gap here, but there'd be a little bit of a disconnect between the bottom part and where it falls on the wall, just because it's further away from the wall. And then I don't know really, like the tail of the bird may only stick out a tiny bit, but anyways, beautiful work as always, Diane. Diane also did the frog and the beetle. And genuinely, I am jealous of how good your background looks. The background on yours looks so much better than all of them, really. The background is super, super soft. The colors, I like the color range. I can see a whole bunch of different color ranges. Maybe you added a couple colors. I'm not sure. But whatever you did, the background looks amazing. It looks super, super smooth, like just almost like it was airbrushed on. It looks really, really good. I couldn't quite get my the dark side of my background to be smooth. I think there was a little bit of a limitation there with the paper, perhaps. I can't remember. I think I used that Strathmore Bristol, which isn't the Strathmore Bristol that I used to use in the past. It's like individual sheets that I purchased, and it just doesn't work as good. You spend a ton of time on the background. Yeah, it looks like it. Like it paid off. This is what you get when you spend the adequate time in the background. Because I say it all the time. Like if the background takes up 50, 60% of the artwork, then 50 or 60% of your time needs to be spent there, because like blurry backgrounds, there is nothing to them. There's no detail, there's no texture, there's nothing. And you perceive it as being like this, just scribble some colors down, blend it with solvent and you're done. And it couldn't be further from that, right? Because getting it smooth and consistent and looking like that is actually one of the hardest things to do. Having a bunch of texture all over the place is easy. You just don't have to layer as much. You don't have to be as consistent or delicate with the coverage. But yeah, the and what you notice with the background being so well done and so smooth, just notice how much more the frog and the beetle just pops off the page. Like it just pushes the frog and the beetle so much closer to the viewer that you don't look at anything else. Like you don't want to be distracted by the background. You want the background to just be sort of the framing of the main subject. And this is a perfect example of when you have a really, really well done background that doesn't distract you from the main object. It instead enhances the main object by pushing it way, way far forward, and it's just the focal point. The textures on the frog and the beetle are just fantastic. Nothing I would change about them, except maybe a touch of blue, like a touch more blue or a touch more purple in the transition of the beetle. So let's just have a look at what that might appear as. So I'm going to actually grab this color here, this blue here, and let's just add some of it here, maybe here, and let's go here and here. And then I'm going to take, let's do green actually. I'm going to take the green of the frog and I'm going to put it on the bottom side of the beetle. So I'm going to put some green here and some green here, down here, and then maybe across this like this. And then let's just go to soft light. Yeah, I think soft light. And then I'm just going to tone it down a little bit. So there's with just a hint more green and blue in the beetle, and it just gives it a little bit more like existence in that particular space where you have a bunch of blue and a bunch of green around it. So it's a very, very small change, and perhaps it's just the photograph that's not picking up those subtle colors, but here's without it and here's with it. Like it's teeny tiny little change, right? But it can really make a big difference in the artwork in person. So looking at a photograph of it, you know, it's like next to impossible to get a photograph to ever look as good as the artwork does in person. Trust me, museums spend millions of dollars taking photos of just the most beautiful artwork you could ever imagine from like 500-600 years ago, and they still can't get it right. Okay, they have like $1 million cameras and technology that gets it down to like the microscopic level of detail, and they still can't make photos look as good as they do in real life. If you've ever visited a museum, then you know that to be true. Because anytime you've seen pictures of the Mona Lisa or anything Rembrandt has ever done, if you've ever looked at any of Rembrandt's artwork, it doesn't even come close to what it looks like in person. I've seen Rembrandt photos since I was a kid. I was never impressed. I stood in front of his paintings in Amsterdam, and I couldn't close my mouth. Like I was constantly picking my jaw up off the ground. I could not believe how amazing they looked. Okay, so yeah, you added some blue. Perhaps I assumed you added blue, but at least in this way, I can show everybody else what the blue and green may appear to be in person. Yeah. So, anyways, beautiful work, Diane. This looks spectacular. All right. Up next is Cindy, and she has this adorable red squirrel. Red squirrels are the most adorable. And I think, yeah, I see Cindy in chat. I love the style of this. It's a very like children's book color style. And so I would not change anything about the stylization of this project. I hopefully I'm safe in assuming that you weren't going for realism here. But the one thing that I would change The one thing that I would change about what you've done here is the direction of the tail. So it's a rather mild thing, but the tail here sort of has these really straight spikes, right? They're very, very straight. They're very, very sharp. Okay, and it looks sharp. It looks a little sharp. I think they need to go in a little bit more complex direction. So have one coming this way, have one coming up like this, and coming like this, and then flowing out, sort of flowing out, as opposed to just going all in the same direction, because it kind of looks porcupine-ish with the little spikes because of the stylization. Partially due to the stylization of this, because everything's sort of a strand. Everything's spaghetti here. It's very adorable. I just think that the tail looks a little bit more spiky than tail-like, and I think that just has to do with the direction that you took everything. If it was just a little bit more spread out, almost like the grass. Like the grass doesn't come off as like sharp spikes. And that's because the grass is sort of going all different directions. And if you were wondering, like your grass and less sort of all the spikes pointing in the same direction. Otherwise, beautiful color combination, really good color harmony. I see the subtle green that you added to the squirrel. That really helps the squirrel fit into the environment, not sort of feel disconnected. So really beautiful color harmony. I like the yellows and the blues and the flowers in the back. Great use of depth, where you have a foreground, middle ground, and background. I think maybe this part, so this part here, I think maybe too much texture, especially in what I perceive to be a tree. I'm not 100% sure, which is I think a problem. If you're not 100% sure what it is, then I think that's a little bit of a problem. If I were to, so let's just have a look here. If I were to take this, let's duplicate it. I'm going to just blur it really quick. And I do apologize if you guys hear any noise from the construction. They're doing something. They always got to do it when I'm streaming. It's been quiet all day. It's been perfectly quiet all day. As soon as I start streaming, they just start doing stuff. Anyways. Or actually, let's do it like this. Let's go here, and then I'm just going to bring back in focus the foreground here. And I'm going to leave that tree and that grass sort of a little bit out of focus. And that might even be too much out of focus. So let me just go here, right there. Yeah, doing like the blurry stuff can be a challenge. Where you sort of started to go wrong is you divided up the like the blades of grass in the textures too much. When you want to go for the blurry stuff, focus on the largest possible shapes, and then just make sure you don't make any like sharp edges. So one object flows right into the next object. So here's before and here's after. It's a very small change. It's a very, very small change, but you can just see it feels a little less distracting. But yeah, the blurriness is definitely a difficult thing to do. It will just take some time and some practice. But yeah, again, here's the original. Here's with just a touch of blurriness. And I think that because the texture on the tree is not so clear to the eye when you look at it, you actually perceive it more to be a tree, because it's like, oh, what's this what's this brown shape in the back? Well, it's got to be a tree, right? Whereas here, there's so much texture and it's diagonal texture. Be very careful with diagonal texture. There's not very many things that have diagonal texture. The tree texture would, even if you used a reference photo and it was sort of growing sideways, having just that small little shape in the back, I think vertical texture would look better. But anyways, beautiful, beautiful illustration. All right, up next is Zayar. Zayar, this, I think it's a particular flower. I didn't take this to be abstract. It's semi-abstract in the sense that there's a lot of space and there's sort of just like these three shapes. I'm just going to go over this one really, really quickly because there's not really a ton of space for an improvement. The first thing is the background. The background would benefit, this artwork would benefit tremendously if, like I was saying before, spending more time on the background, adding some greens, some blues, some more blacks, darken it, smooth it out, and then get rid of the texture. Get rid of as much texture as you can in the background so that the foreground objects stand out a lot more. Okay, that's going to make the yellows and the oranges and the purples and the greens just pop off the page that much more drastically. The other thing about the background is this shape here. That's a little bit too big of a brush. This shape here, just make that match the background. There's no benefit whatsoever as just throwing in a random brown just because it was part of the reference photo. Instead, just have that leaf cut out, have the flower there, and then have the rest of the background like a deep black, blue, purple color. And it's just going to look that much better. The other thing, just more layers. Yeah, just more layers. If you were to double the amount of layers that you have on everything here, it would be twice as good, I promise you. So you don't have to do anything except more layers. And you'll take this from like a 6 to an 8. Okay? With you don't need to practice anything, you don't need any special techniques, nothing. All you need to do is more time and layers, and that's it. Thank you, Zayar, for the submission. And I hope that you do put in a little bit more time and add those layers because I'd love to see this if you do. All right. Now it's Cherry, and yeah, she's got several. I paused on this one, Cherry, for a long time because I was like, is that the reference photo? For the longest time I was sitting there looking, I was like, is that the reference photo? Because I thought for sure it was the reference photo. There's so many good things about this. I mean, the story of it is fun and goofy and interesting. And I was looking at it, I was like, is it a reference photo? Because it was so good. It was like I was looking at the ice cream and the berries, and I was like, man, that ice cream looks like it's melting on the paper. Like it genuinely looks like it's melting. Like so good. The contrast between the texture and the color of the ice cream, like all of these just to clarify, like all of these little shapes here. These little shapes here, you know, when you scoop ice cream and it's not perfectly smooth, it has these like little gaps and stuff. You got those, like all of this texture here. I have to zoom in on this one. Hold on a second. Look at this subtleness right here. This is subtlety to perfection. This shape right here, just so soft. The color difference is just enough for your eyes to recognize the softness of the ice cream. I mean, I was blown away by this. I was genuinely blown away by this. Cherry, this is probably the best art that I've seen from you. So good. So good. Compositionally, it's perfect. Textures everywhere. Just Great. Now, there's one thing that bothers me about it. There's one thing. And I'm going to duplicate it really quick because I'm going to do a before and after. The one thing that bothers me is the light. Okay? And you have these hiking figures, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but these are cast shadows, right? I'm not wrong here. These are cast shadows. All these black lines here, correct? These are cast shadows. I mean, if they're not cast shadows, I don't know what they are, which it would be a problem. But here, let me. This is the copy now. I'm going to erase these cast shadows. I'm just going to erase them. These ones might be a little bit harder to erase, so give me a second. Yes, cast shadows. I could only perceive them to be cast shadows. Okay. That's pretty clean. I'm trying to get rid of all of the cast shadows. Maybe a little bit more right here. Yeah, let's get rid of that one. A little bit more right here, maybe just like that. Okay. I think that already looks better. The black lines weren't working for two reasons. One, they were really contrasted and they showed up really black. The second is that they didn't follow the forms of the objects the people are supposed to be walking on, right? So now I'm going to add cast shadows that I think work better. So first off, let's look at the ice cream. So you have the light side of the ice cream here, and then you have a shadow here. This is a shadow on the ice cream. This is a shadow on the ice cream. Well, what is the shadow on the ice cream? The shadow is where the light isn't hitting. So if the light is hitting the people and creating a cast shadow, then the cast shadow is also where the light isn't hitting the ice cream. So ask yourself, why would the shadow be a different color on the dark side of the scoop than the cast shadow of the people blocking the light from hitting that same ice cream? It wouldn't. If something has a shadow on, like, the light, actually, yeah, this is good. This is good. Let's so I have too many lights on, but if the light is hitting the front of this, and you can't see the back of it because no matter how I turn it, you can't see the back. But the light is not hitting the back. Okay? The light's not hitting the back, so that's in the back is a shadow. If I put my finger in front of the light, so you can see the shadow of my finger, just because I'm putting my finger in front of the light and it's creating that color difference for the shadow in front of the object, that shadow is the same color as the shadow on the back because it's just light not hitting the object, right? So it's the same thing with your figures. Okay. The shadow doesn't change color just because the object blocking the light is a different object. So the shadow should still be the ice cream color. So I'm going to grab the shadow that you have in the ice cream, and now I'm going to create the cast shadow on the ice cream for these people. I'm also going to do it a bit more the way the form of the ice cream is. Okay? That's what the cast shadow on the ice cream people should look like. So here's, let me group this. So here's what yours look like. These black lines coming from, I don't know. I don't know where the black lines are coming from, but they're not cast onto the shape of the ice cream. And then here is the color of the ice cream shadow and the cast shadow also working with the form of the ice cream because it's curved surface. So that cast shadow is not falling straight. It's falling and it's curving around the curvature of the ice cream. The same issue over here, but not as much as on the ice cream because the shadow on the cup or the bowl or whatever you want to call it isn't, right? So this is the color. It's more of like a grayish bluish or something. So these shadows weren't too bad, but they need to wrap around. So they're sort of like this. They'll wrap around the edge or something like that. So there's the cast shadows with the correct color and relatively closer shape matching the form of the objects that the people are standing on. So again, here's before. It's still beautiful. Like the artwork is amazing. Okay, not taking anything away from that. But you want improvement. I think that's where you improve. So creating cast shadows sort of from nothing, doing images like this and changing the objects, changing the light or manipulating the colors in any way. Sometimes it just takes a bit more thinking and understanding of the light and what the colors you should use. So don't think of shadows as being the color of shadows is not influenced by the object that's causing the shadow. Okay, so that's the thing that I want everybody to take away from this. No matter what the object is that's creating the shadow, it doesn't affect the color of the shadow itself. Okay, unless it's like a dark piece of blue glass and the light is actually coming through. That's totally different. That's diffusion. That's not shadow. But anyways, this is wonderful work, Cherry. Thank you so much for the submission. And then Cherry also did this pastel project. I believe all of them are pastel with the exception of this one. This one's also really, really fantastic. I'm going to breeze through this one really quick because this one's shadows, similar to Linda's cat drawing. What I think would, where you'd benefit here, bringing in some more form light. So here on the face, behind the ear, you have a little bit of a shadow there. But let's just go to, multiply. Yeah, let's go to multiply. And I'm just going to, there. That's it. Creating a little bit more form shadow. Thinking about the bigger shape. Like, look how big these shapes are that I applied, right? There's no detail to these shapes, just big shapes, right? And I just plastered it right on the side of the face to give it a bit more form, and that gives more story to the light. So here's before. It's still a fantastic piece of art, but by creating a little bit more form, forcing it there, focusing on those shadow shapes, the face just has a bit more three-dimensional quality to it. Whereas here, it's still beautiful, but the face looks a little flat, I think. So just a mild change, really quick, easy change. You want to think of your objects. Remember, think of your objects not as what they are. So when you're drawing, when you're painting this lion, don't think of it as a lion. Identify the form shapes. So what I mean by that is if I were to break up the object between shadow and light, then I would do something like this, right? This is all shadow here, right? This is the shadow part of the lion. All this is shadow, and then all this is shadow, right? So all this is shadow. Everything else is light, okay? So I need to make sure that these two separate shapes, the light and the shadow shapes, are distinguishable in the artwork because it's those shapes that create the overall form of the object that I'm trying to convince the viewer that they're looking at. Because remember, there's not a lion here. This is not a picture of a lion. This is strategically placed colors on a piece of paper. And you're attempting to convince the viewer, all of us, that we are looking at a lion. So you're not drawing a lion, you're drawing very strategic shapes using colors, in this case colors, to convince the viewer that they're looking at a lion. And so you want to make sure that you identify the necessary shapes to create the form and all of that. Hopefully you find that helpful. All right, and then Cherry also did this project in pastel. Fantastic. Really, really great colors, everything, the textures, looks really, really good. The gradients, the under gradients of the blanket look good. However, I do feel like the satin texture didn't quite show up. So you're sort of the opposite of Diane here. You have really nice soft gradients on the tablecloth, but not enough texture to create that sort of fuzzy, velvety look. A little bit more dots, I think. I think there needs to be a little bit more dots in the highlights to create that sort of fuzziness that blanket sort of has. The fruit looked great. The texture on the oranges. The bird looks really, really good. Really great, bright yellow. I like that. The highlights in the jug, I also feel maybe it's the quality of the photo. So forgive me. But I feel like the jug needs a few more dots. I can see the subtle lines, the horizontal lines, those look really, really good. But I think the jug needs a little bit more dots to create that clay texture. But everything else looks really, really good here. Good wood grain texture. Yeah, it looks great. So fantastic job on that, Cherry. And then last but not least, Cherry also did this colored pencil project. And Cherry's, you mainly do pastels, right? I'm not mistaken there. I think you're sort of the opposite of Linda. Linda does basically everything in colored pencils. Cherry does everything in pastels and only sort of dabbles in colored pencils. And this is a difficult project. Like this is a really difficult colored pencil project. I think you did a really, really good job. You said you didn't quite like your foliage, the way the foliage came out. And I think the reason you don't really like the foliage here is because you've defined the shapes a little bit too much. So you want to be you want to have a little bit less definition in those oval shapes of the leaves. The other thing is that every single leaf that you put in your foliage is like clearly separated, and that's just not the way it happens. You know, you have a leaf here and then you have a leaf hanging out on top of it and you got a leaf coming off the other side, whereas here every individual leaf is separated, like it has a clear space Uh, all the leaves here are social distancing themselves from one another, and it's just not the way leaves look. So I think that's why you don't really like your foliage. It still comes off foliage like. You need a little bit more clumping of your leaves, okay? But the frog, the beetle, the textures look great. The background, the background. I always got to talk about the background, but more layers. I think more layers on the background would have went a long way. I like that you changed up the background. You got some sort of foresty shapes there. You got a few different colors as well. And I think if you did another 2 layers or so on the background, just nice and light and slow layers, you'll smooth that out. But it looks pretty smooth. Yeah, the background looks pretty smooth. Careful with any like real distinct lines, like these bright shapes or whatever. I'm not really sure exactly what you intended them on being, but just be careful with creating any directional lines in a blurry background because they can be kind of hard to hide. Like this shape here, just it's a little bit too distinguished. Like that shape, it's like you want to. It's sort of distracting in the way that you're trying to guess what it is. Whereas if it was just a bit softer, then maybe the viewer would just glance over it and not think about what it is. They would just assume, there's it's a foresty scene, there's something in the back, and that's about it. But it came out really, really good. For someone that struggles with colored pencils, it doesn't look like you struggle with colored pencils. All right, up next is Claire. I think she has quite a bit of submissions, or just two. I think maybe it was the monthly masteries, or maybe it was Melanie. I can't keep track. There's so much artwork. Avocado looks amazing. Claire, I don't know if I saw you in chat, but if you are in chat, the original project here was done with just the 12 pack of polychromos. And if you did do this with just the 12 pack of polychromos, then very good on you. It looks like you did because all of the colors are very similar to what I recall seeing when we did this project. Who knows how many years ago we did this project because I couldn't tell you. If I guessed, it'd be last year, but for all I know, it could have been 5 years ago. But the texture differences between the avocado skin, the avocado meat, and the pit is spectacular. Really, really, really well done. I feel like I could just scoop the avocado right out of this. It looks really, really good. And then Claire also did this ostrich. I almost forgot what kind of bird this was. Actually, are ostriches considered birds, or is there something else that they're considered? I forget. There's like emus, rheas, and ostriches, and they're like a certain thing. They're like all considered one thing. I'm not sure if it's a bird. But anyways, this one's rather simple. Um, and one thing that I wanted to talk about here was the line art actually. Um, so the avocado was also 3 years ago. Okay, okay. Oh, okay. So Claire Fox is not this Claire. Okay, okay. So this is a different Claire. Yeah, we have like 10 Lisas, and now we have 2 Claires, and my sister's name is Lisa. So there's so many Lisas. I can't keep track. I cannot keep track. But anyways, the line art here, your strategy for the line art, I kind of like it, but I think that this part is too much. I don't think that you should do this. What you're trying, the information that you're trying to collect here with, okay, so they are considered birds. I wasn't certain because there's like a family of birds that I can't remember the technical name for, and it's like the emu, the ostrich, the rhea, and they're like a certain group of birds. They're all like really tall and lanky, and they got those crazy body types. Anyways, off topic. Anyway, so the line art here, the information that you're trying to collect, I think you want to avoid using these lines in your line art for because you're just going to end up erasing them. And what would have been better, I can't tell from the actual drawing here whether you worked on white paper or not because it's really gray. It's sort of could be gray, like a light gray, but the thing is, the background of the reference photo is dark. It's darker than the light fur that is coming out from the bird, right? And to create that on a white piece of paper, it's just never going to look right because it's that contrast reversal. You're going to be adding dark lines on white paper to get that fuzziness off of the bird. And it's never going to look as good as if you were to use a darker background and then use lighter lines. So for that effect, I would highly recommend you use non-white paper and then add that fuzziness of the fur with a lighter color than the paper. So like white. You're going to like that result a whole lot more. The other thing, like I really like that you've identified this dark shape here around the eye, but for the life of me, I cannot figure out why you didn't put it in the drawing. Like where's this shape, right? You didn't add it. You identified it in your line art, but then you forgot to add it in your drawing. Try not to do that because it's rather important feature to the face of this bird. Also, you identified this nice shape here, but it's just not as dark. Like it's not as noticeable in the drawing. Also, the beak, that dark shape that should be right here and right here. Like really define those shapes. Focus on the shapes. Rat tights. Yes, that's the group I was thinking of. Rat tights. Yeah. I see I was thinking they were just considered rat tights, not birds. I wasn't sure if there was a distinction there. I'm not a zoologist. Not a zoologist. I knew enough information to make a mistake. That's all. Anyways, so fantastic, Claire. Up next is Melanie. She has a few projects here. All these projects were the 12 pack of Polychromos projects that I've done a number of projects with just a 12 pack of Polychromos. Really great texture on this apple. This looks fantastic. I like to see the subtle green and yellow in the cast shadow. The cast shadow probably could use another layer or two, a bit more pencil texture showing up there, but overall, really great texture in the apple. It looks fantastic. And then she did the avocado twice. The avocado looks really good. I think the second one is better. I think this one down here is better. The sort of the subtleties are more subtle, whereas in the top one, it's not as subtle. Yeah, both are good, but I think I like the bottom one just a touch better. Yeah, good textures in the pit of it. And I perceive this drawing to be rather small, so that can be difficult working at a small size. You did a really good job on both of those. Then you did the eye project. This one's a bit more difficult because dealing with skin tones when you're working with just the 12 pack. Yeah, the 12 pack projects are super fun. I'm definitely going to be doing some more in the the coming new year. Uh, a couple things: the eye, the texture, spot on, looks fantastic. Around the, I don't know, I'm pointing at my own face. I can just draw on here. This line, oops, sorry. This line here, the water line of the bottom eyelid, too much of a line. We just don't have lines. Like there's no line there. Um, so you be careful with that. She definitely got an eyebrow job like recently because this edging here is just flawless. But whoever did it forgot to do the top. So the bottom needs a little bit more variation because eyebrows just aren't that perfect unless you go to the salon to get it done like that. In which case, just from a guy's perspective, we think it looks weird. Ladies, don't do it. You don't need perfectly straight eyebrows. I think they look weird. I think most guys think they look weird. But yeah, the bottom just needs a little bit of variation there. The eyelashes are a bit thick. The eyelashes are a bit thick, and the one of the like the biggest issue with the eyelashes is that they're thick from the base to the tip, which is not the way eyelashes uh, appear. If you're wearing mascara, which I can't recall the reference photo perfectly, I perceive that she was probably wearing mascara, creating a little bit more of that clumping near the base. So the bottom part will be thicker, even without mascara. But the bottom part where the eyelash connects to the person is a little bit thicker, and so you want a more tapered look of your eyelashes. The direction, the curvature looks pretty good for the eyelashes. You just need a bit more of a taper there. And be careful with like solid black, like really, really solid black eyelashes, because eyelashes are made of hair, and hair has a bit of translucent property to it where light can go through it a bit. And so, definitely where the eyelashes become thinner, tapering off towards the ends of them, they become lighter simply because light is able to pass through them a bit more. So just be careful making your eyelashes real, real thick and really, really dark because there is a bit of variation there. And then the last one that Melanie submitted was this lovely skull. And this skull was a really fun exercise that I learned 15 years ago or something. I don't even know. It was like 15 years ago, which kind of makes me die a little bit inside. But the idea of this project is you assign a color to a value as opposed to like a gray color. So, for instance, purple becomes black and yellow becomes white. And so you transition through the value spectrum only using colors corresponding to a particular value. So you could do like red, orange, yellow, or blue, green, yellow, or any sort of variation on the color wheel, where you assign a color based off that color's value to the value of a grayscale image, and then you color it, and you sort of get this really unique effect. Anyways, now it is on to the monthly masteries, and I got a lot to talk about with monthly masteries. This one is Melanie's monthly mastery number 2. This is like picture perfect, Melanie. This is exactly what I expect from the monthly mastery 2. If I were to do it myself, I don't even know if I'd be able to get it this good. This is precision at its finest. Very, very clean edges without lines. So for those of you that are doing the monthly masteries, this is like the ideal look. Now, take into account this is monthly mastery 2. So at this stage, we were not doing reflections, we were not doing highlights, and we were not doing gradients of the cast shadows. So those things come later on in the monthly masteries, but for monthly mastery 2, this is ideally what I was looking for. You have smooth coverage, really, really good distinct value changes between your 0, 1, and 2 for the shadows and your 3, 4, 5 for the lights. The gradients are really, really well done, very smooth. They showcase the form of the objects in the image, and it looks very three-dimensional, and that's precisely what you're aiming for. And there's no lines drawn around the shapes. So the shapes are colors, not like, you know, line art filled in. So this is really, really well done. And I have two more monthly masteries from Melanie here, but I'm going to jump to Claire really quick. Claire did monthly mastery 1 and 2. This is also really, really good examples. The edging could be a little bit sharper in some spots. Like this edge here and this edge here could be a tiny bit better, but still very, very fantastic. Wonderful gradients over here. I like to see this. I like to see you taking the time to break down the shapes, even doing a little sketch. I mean, I'm not saying you have to do this, but it's good. You see these fundamentals in the monthly masteries, they're not difficult. I fully admit that. They are not hard, they are not difficult. The difficult part is putting in the time to do them very, very well. And I get that can be a lot to ask for, even with simple shapes and objects that we do in the monthly masteries. Although, just a fair warning, those shapes and objects will get progressively more difficult in the next year, because not only will the objects change, but we're going to be doing color as well. But taking the time to understand and measuring out things, you get results like this, and this is a really, really good result for the first two monthly masteries. This is ideally what I'm looking for, and for those particular monthly masteries. All right, back to Melanie. She did monthly mastery number 3. Another very clean look, precise, sharp edges. This edge gets a little wonky right here, but that's okay. The reason monthly mastery 3 has the shapes that it has is because there is a hard shadow right here, and that hard shadow then transitions into a gradient right here. So you have a hard cast shadow into a form shadow. And that's why I placed these objects in this way, to get you visualizing that distinction. And that distinction is made very clear in Melanie's example here, because she has those really nice sharp edges, very smooth gradient on the cylinder. Everything looks fantastic. Again, monthly mastery 3, there was no reflections, there was no highlights, and there was no gradient in the cast shadows. Monthly mastery 4 from Melanie, this is where reflections and highlights were implemented. Again, really clean, sharp edges, and the gradient on the cone. The gradient on the cone looks pretty good. I feel like it may want to be like just a little bit here, like just spreading it just a little bit more to get that curvature a bit softer, I think maybe. But it still looks really good. Uh, See the reflection. So the reflection's good. The clean edges, still doing really good on the clean edges. This looks really good. Up next, Diane did monthly mastery number 10. And this one, as you can see, monthly mastery number 10, starting to get pretty hard. Very nice edges here. The sharp edges look great. Like these edges look fantastic. The cone is a problem for a lot of people because you have the form shadow that sort of, so this is the shadow here, right? And so this middle line is a gradient. This is where the gradient falls. And then there's a reflection. And a lot of people are struggling with this, with the cone, because the form shadow should come a little bit further. And in the reference, the highlight, or not highlight, the reflection. So this light part is too light in your drawing here. So it's just a little bit too light. And what this is coming from is that you're looking at the reference photo and you're trying to get it a little bit closer to what the reference photo shows as opposed to the rules of the monthly mastery. So try not to get your reflections so bright because they shouldn't be brighter than the darkest light. Okay? Let me repeat that. Your reflections, which happen in the shadows, like this is a reflection, this is a reflection, and that's it. So that's the two reflection, or there's a little bit of reflection here. Those are the three reflections here. Your reflections should never be brighter than your darkest light, okay? So they only need to be there subtly for them to appear as a reflection. Don't chase after the reference photos for the monthly masteries. I've tried to reiterate that each month, but I know that it's difficult. This is the hard part of the monthly masteries, is that you have to disconnect yourself from trying to copy the reference photo and instead try to focus on the rule set. Once you learn the rule set, then you can start expanding out, and breaking those rules later on. And it's just, I know it feels arbitrary and sort of counterintuitive, but the purpose is the purpose is like learning. I'm trying to think of a good example here. The rules are sort of like the order of operations. And Diane, I know you understand this. When you learn addition and you learn subtraction and then you learn multiplication and division, and then you start getting equations that have all these things in it, where it has addition and subtraction and multiplication. And just about every teacher does this. When you get into, what is it, 5th grade, 6th grade, when you start getting into like 2-term equations where it's like 2 plus 4 times 3, something like that. And every teacher does this. They're like, they give you your first equation and it's like 2 plus 4 times 3. And they're like, here, solve this equation. And you intuitively just go left to right. So 2 plus 4 is 6 times 3 is 18. And so you write down 18. And the teacher's like, no, you're wrong. And you're like, how's it wrong? Because I'm trying to think of the numbers I use. So 2 plus 4 times 3, it's 4 times 3, 12, plus 2, 14. The answer is 14 because you didn't follow the order of operations. And then you learn the order of operations and it feels weird. It's like, well, why don't you just do it from left to right? It just seems easier like that. That's sort of what the rule set is for the monthly masteries. I'm teaching you the order of operations. And it's counterintuitive in the beginning. But if you just follow them, it will make sense as we get to more complex reference photos. Reference photos that aren't just simple shapes on a table. So just keep that in mind. All right. Let's see. Diane, this one's also yours. I forgot to name it in Photoshop, but yeah, this one came out really good. I like the contrast here. Contrast looks really, really good. I like it better than the contrast here. Contrast looks fantastic in this one. Uh, Nice sharp edges, good reflections. I see the reflections down here. Yeah, reflections look really good. Um, the gradient on the sphere, a little hard. A little hard. Gradient on the cylinder, just a tiny bit hard. Now, this could be the photograph as well, but I think for sure the sphere, the edge here, probably not the photograph, um, needs to be a little bit softer. And that will just make it look more spherical, that's all. But otherwise, good distinction between the one or the 0 and the 1 values. Very, very clean distinction there. So yeah, excellent, excellent. This one looks kind of small. I like how you titled it with a negative space. That's just make it even harder for you. Um, and then I got Linda here. Yeah, this one looks good. I think, yeah, trying to, hmm, I'm having I'm having a hard time distinguishing between the 3 and 4 value. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure if this is your 3 and this is also your 3. And if this is your 3, these all look like 3. Those all look like 3. At least to me they do. Yeah, to me those look like 3. And if so, I don't think I ever mentioned this. So if the background is 3, because the background is 3, right? The background's always 3. The background moves right into this shape, right into that rectangular prism. There's no line here. So if this is 3, which the background should be 3, and this is also 3, then I shouldn't see anything here. There should be no line. It should just be 3 moves right into 3. Because remember, it's shapes. It's just shapes where there's no cylinder, there's no sphere or cone or rectangular prisms, nothing. Just the shapes of the value. That's the very first thing. That was monthly mastery 1. Shapes, value. And if the value is 3 here, and the value is 3 here, then there is no, this is just one shape. The shape is this, right? And it just goes from it. That's the shape. So this is all just one value, if that's the case. Okay, so the value is 4. Yeah, sometimes this is difficult to see with the photograph, but okay. Then I would just say like the edges could be a little sharper, a little bit more distinct. So that's otherwise it looks good. I'm not quite sure what this is. That part there is a little unclear. I know that this shape here is a hexagon prism. So this part is like a little bit of the light showing through, but it's not. It doesn't look solid. It doesn't look like a solid color. It sort of looks gradientish or something like that. I don't know. That part there is there's something unclear. There's something unclear for me there. That's a reflection. Yeah, I'm having a hard time seeing it. Lisa here. Is this the same Lisa that's in chat? Um, so this one, this is a good example, and I don't mean this in a bad way. I don't or anything. This is a good example of not of not using the rules. And like I said, I don't mean that like in a bad way. So graphite is going to be probably the most difficult way to do the monthly masteries because you need to have a very clear distinction of your zero value, your one value, your two value, and then as we move from the shadows to the lights, you need a clear distinction of the 3, 4, and 5 value. So at no point should there be any white paper because we're covering the paper completely. So the entire paper should be no lighter than your 5 value. There's no white. And so your darkest value, your zero value, you want to distinguish these shapes. And this will be the darkest value you can get with your graphite pencils, which, let's face it, it's not very dark, right? Graphite at the best gets like a medium gray for its darkest value. And because of that, getting 5 other distinct values with graphite is going to be kind of hard. It's going to be pretty rough, which is going to make the monthly masteries substantially more difficult. The other thing is the background is just a 3 value. The background is a solid 3 value. And you can see that in these. See how the 3 value is just the background? The background, everything, just 3 value. It's all just one flat color. Everything. So make sure there's no line here. There's no line. This is a product of trying to replicate the reference photo, because the reference photo, there is a distinction between the wall in the back and the table that I have these objects, photographed on. So forget the background and focus on the distinguishing shapes of the objects first, and then you can fill in the background. But I would, if you find graphite to be difficult, if it's not your main medium, then I would highly recommend just using colored pencils, because as you can see, what other people have done is that they're using one pencil for each distinct value. And that makes it a lot easier, because then you can just use that one pencil. And then when you need to go to your 1 value, your 2 value, and so on, you just use that one distinct pencil. Whereas with graphite, the only way to have those distinct values is the amount of graphite that you use on the paper. So it could be substantially more difficult. But it's a really good attempt. It's a really good attempt. I would also recommend drawing it smaller. the monthly masteries are not about, full-fledged artworks. They're just working on the preciseness, and breaking down the references with the rule set, to create a three-dimensional image. That's what it is right now. Monthly masteries for year one is all about just building a deeper understanding of light and shadow. And then next year we're going to get into color anyway, so graphite won't even be an option. Anyways, if you have any questions about the monthly masteries, Lisa, I'm more than happy to go into detail. This last one is Linda's monthly mastery 11. This one looks fantastic, Linda. Yeah, this one looks great. Again, some sharpness around the edges a bit, I think would go a long way. But as far as the three-dimensional look of the image, I think it looks great. Yeah, I think this looks really, really good. Did you happen to change the... Now, are these different colors? Because this one looks more French gray. This one looks more cool gray. I don't know. Maybe it could just be the lighting of the lighting when you took the photos. But this one looks a lot better. I think that maybe the pencils you used here are better than the ones that you used here, because the value distinction is oh, you changed the paper. Oh, this is pastel matte. Oh, and that's the paint on. Okay. Yeah, I think pastel matte might be your paper, Linda. I tell you what, the stuff you do on pastel matte with colored pencils looks spectacular. And yeah, this looks really, really good. I think now pastel matte is rather challenging to get those sharp, crisp lines, because of the amount of texture it has. But I think that, yeah, I think that maybe you can sharpen up those edges with a paintbrush and solvent. Very, very carefully, you can use solvent. I might actually do a monthly mastery. Well, actually, I'm going to do the first next in January. January's monthly mastery will be the first monthly mastery where we use color. And I have all of the shapes that you see in monthly mastery 1, I painted, and they're all different colors. I have green, blue, purple. I showed you some of them a couple weeks ago or whatnot, but all of them are painted. And so we're going to have all kinds of colors. I'm going to do like fruits and vegetable still lifes. Later on in the year, we'll get a little bit more complex, but yeah, so next year working with color, we're going to basically start over with the simplicity, simple colors, and then it will get more complex from there. But yeah, the pastel matte, it's it works really well for you, Linda. Yeah. But that is it. That's the last project. I mean, amazing artwork. We did miss last month's live critique, so I had a bit more artwork to go through today, which is why it took 2 hours. But I enjoyed it. I'm super excited how well all of you are doing, how much amazing art I get to see every time. Yeah, this has been really, really fantastic. Yeah, you finally did a monthly mastery, right? Yeah, it looks really, really good, Linda. Yeah, it looks super, super good. Even if, don't feel like you did the monthly masteries wrong. Just feel like you improved. You did nothing wrong. Trying is not wrong. Okay? Trying is not wrong. You try until you succeed, and you've succeeded here on monthly mastery number 11. And I think monthly mastery number 12 is going to look even better. So we're all seeing the improvement. I've been blessed to see the improvement from all of your guys' artwork over the years, it continues to get so much better, and I hope that you feel the same because you should. You should definitely feel the same. We can all be our own worst critic, and we almost always will be. But I can assure you, I am genuinely seeing the improvement from every single person that submits artwork, every single one of you. So you're all doing really, really, really well. Okie dokie. Well, that is going to wrap up this month's monthly mastery. I hope you guys enjoyed, not monthly mastery, monthly live critique. I'm the monthly masteries is so deep in my head right now because I'm thinking about all the fun stuff we're gonna do next year with color. But anyways, thank you guys so much for coming by and hanging out. I hope that you learned something. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to give the live stream a thumbs up so we can help grow this new channel. And I'll see you on Monday for the continuation of the pastel project. So I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.